Imagine waking up one morning and deciding you were going to print money, not fake money, not play money, real, convincing, spendable, 50 million pounds worth. Now imagine actually doing it and getting away with it for years. This is not a movie. This is not fiction. This is the true story of one man, a man so skilled, so bold, so dangerously clever that when the British government finally caught him, they didn't just throw him in prison. They completely redesigned the 50-pound note. His name was Anatasios Arnaouti, and this is his story. Manchester, England, mid-1990s. On the surface, it looks like any other busy British city. Markets bustling, people going to work, kids going to school. But underneath the surface, something extraordinary was happening. Someone, somewhere in this city had figured out a secret that would cost the British economy tens of millions of pounds, a secret that would embarrass the Bank of England, and a secret that would eventually force the government to spend hundreds of thousands of pounds redesigning one of their most important banknotes. Now, to understand how one man pulled this off, we need to go back to the beginning. We need to talk about what it actually takes to counterfeit money, because most people think it's simple, right? You just take a photo of a banknote, print it out, done. Wrong. Dead wrong. Counterfeiting money, real, convincing counterfeiting, is one of the most technically difficult crimes in the world. Modern banknotes are not just pieces of paper with ink on them. They are engineering masterpieces. The paper is made from cotton and linen fibers, not regular wood pulp. That's why real money has that distinctive feel when you rub it between your fingers. That crisp, slightly rough texture, that's not an accident, that's security. Then there are watermarks built into the paper itself, metallic security threads woven through it, holograms that shift color when you tilt the note, ultraviolet ink completely invisible to the naked eye, and the ink specially formulated by governments, kept secret, almost impossible to replicate. Governments spend billions making sure their money cannot be copied. The Bank of England had some of the most sophisticated anti-counterfeiting technology in the world. They were confident in their 50-pound note. They believed it was, for all practical purposes, impossible to fake. They were wrong. Anatasios Arnaouti was born in Cyprus. He came to England as a young man, like thousands of others looking for a better life in Britain. He settled in Manchester, and by the time the late 1990s arrived, he had built himself a life, a business, a home, a routine. But Arnaouti was also a man with a particular kind of ambition, not the kind that drives people to work harder, study longer, build something legitimate. No, Arnaouti had a different kind of ambition, the kind that looks at a 50-pound note and thinks, I can make that. Now, here is where his story becomes truly remarkable, because Arnaouti wasn't a trained printer. He wasn't a chemist. He didn't have access to government printing facilities or top-secret inks. He was, in many ways, an ordinary man. But he had something that most ordinary men don't have: patience, obsession, and an extraordinary eye for detail. He started small. He got his hands on high-quality printing equipment, professional-grade scanners, commercial printers, the kind of machines that legitimate businesses use for high-end design work. And then he started studying. He studied the 50-pound note like a scientist studying a specimen. He looked at every line, every color, every shade of ink, every tiny detail that most people never even notice when they're handling money. He tested different papers, different inks, different printing techniques. He failed. Over and over again he failed, but he kept going. Because here's the thing about Arnaouti that investigators would later come to understand. He wasn't just trying to make good fakes, he was trying to make perfect fakes. There's a massive difference between those two things. A good fake might fool a distracted cashier in a busy shop. A perfect fake fools everyone, and Arnaouti was chasing perfection. By the late 1990s, Arnaouti had built what investigators would later describe as a sophisticated counterfeiting operation right in the heart of Manchester. He had a workshop equipped with high-end printing machinery. He had a supply chain sourcing specialist materials, papers as close as he could get to the real thing, and he had a product: 50-pound notes. The 50-pound note is a very specific choice, and it was a smart one. Think about it. A 50 is the highest denomination note in regular British circulation, which means most ordinary people see them far less often than tenors or 20s. Most cashiers handle them less often. Most people are less familiar with exactly what they look and feel like. That gives a counterfeiter an advantage. If you fake a 10-pound note, people handle tens every single day. They know exactly how it feels, exactly how it looks. Any imperfection gets spotted fast. But a 50? That big note someone gets out for a special occasion or a large purchase? The cashier might pause for a second, but they're less likely to be certain something is wrong. Arnaouti understood this, and he exploited it brilliantly. His notes started appearing across Manchester, then beyond Manchester, in shops, in market stalls, in restaurants and pubs. And here is the most remarkable part of this story. Many of them passed. Not just past a quick glance, some of them passed bank checks. Now, they weren't perfect. They never truly were. Under close professional examination, trained eyes could spot the differences. The paper wasn't quite right, the ink wasn't perfectly matched, the security features were approximations rather than the real thing. But in everyday use, in real-world conditions, they were convincing enough to cause havoc. Police and trading standards officers started reporting reports. Fake 50s here, fake 50s there. Businesses losing money, people being defrauded. The notes were being tracked, logged, analyzed, and investigators started to notice something. These weren't random low-quality counterfeits from different sources. These were consistent, the same quality, the same style, the same technical approach. Someone was running an organized operation, someone with skill, with equipment, with serious intent. The hunt was on. Let's take a moment to talk about the scale of what Arnaouti was doing, because numbers tell a story that words sometimes can't. Over the course of his operation, investigators estimate that Arnaouti printed and circulated notes with the face value of approximately £50 million. £50 million. Let that number sit for a moment. That is not pocket change. That is not a small-time crime. That is one of the largest counterfeiting operations in British history, and it was being run out of Manchester by one man. Now, how do you actually get £50 million worth of fake notes into circulation? You can't just walk into Tesco with a wheelbarrow full of fake 50s. You need a distribution network, and this is where Arnaouti showed just how organized and businesslike his criminal operation had become. He wasn't going shop to shop himself. He wasn't the one standing at market stalls trying to buy a newspaper with a fake 50 and asking for change. He was the producer. Like any other product, he made it and then he sold it. Other criminals would buy his fake notes at a discount, paying say £15 or £20 for a fake £50 note, and then they would be the ones putting them into circulation. Everyone made money. The fake money went out into the world, and the chain of hands between Arnaouti and the crime meant it was harder to trace back to him. It was, in criminal terms, a business model, a deeply illegal, morally bankrupt, economically destructive business model, but a business model nonetheless, and for a while, it worked. By the early 2000s, British law enforcement had a serious problem on their hands. The counterfeits were spreading. Reports were coming in from across the country. Businesses were suffering. The Bank of England was alarmed, and somewhere out there, someone was still printing. The investigation brought together multiple agencies: police, the Bank of England's own security teams, trading standards, and specialist financial crime units. They were building a picture, slowly, painstakingly, piece by piece. Counterfeiting investigations are unlike almost any other type of criminal investigation. You can't follow blood, you can't follow a weapon, you can't trace a crime scene the way you can with violence. What you follow is the paper. Every single counterfeit note that gets recovered tells a story. Investigators examine them under microscopes, they measure the ink coverage, they analyze the paper fibers, they study the printing patterns, and when enough notes are examined, patterns emerge. Tiny technical patterns that point back to a single source, a single printer, a single batch of ink, a single set of plates. The investigation was slow, these things always are, but it was moving, and it was moving toward Manchester and toward one name: Anatasios Arnaouti. When investigators finally had enough evidence, they moved. A raid on Arnaouti's operation in Manchester, and what they found was extraordinary. This wasn't a makeshift setup in a back bedroom. This was a proper counterfeiting operation. Professional printing equipment worth tens of thousands of pounds, specialist inks, specialist papers, cutting equipment, scanning equipment, and fake notes, hundreds of thousands of pounds worth, ready to go.
Arnaouti was arrested, and when prosecutors laid out the full picture of what he had done, the scale, the sophistication, the audacity, even experienced detectives were taken aback. One man, one operation, £50 million. It was, by any measure, breathtaking. Arnaouti was charged with counterfeiting offences, and when his case came before the courts, he was convicted. He was sentenced to 7 years in prison. 7 years for printing £50 million. Now, some people hear that sentence and think it sounds short, but counterfeiting sentencing reflects a complex calculation: the harm to the economy, the sophistication of the crime, the evidence available for prosecution. 7 years was considered appropriate for the offences proven. But here is where the story of Anatasios Arnaouti takes a truly remarkable turn, because the consequences of what he had done didn't end with his prison sentence, not even close. The Bank of England was embarrassed, not just embarrassed, deeply, institutionally embarrassed, because the £50 note, the note they had declared to be essentially unforgeable, had been forged. Not perfectly, but convincingly enough to cause £50 million worth of damage. And if one man in Manchester could do this with commercial printing equipment, what could a nation-state do? What could a well-funded criminal organisation do? The Bank of England made a decision. The existing £50 note had to go. Not gradually phased out over decades, but actively replaced. A new £50 note would be designed with upgraded security features, new holograms, new printing techniques, new materials. All of this costs money, a lot of money. Designing, testing, and introducing a new banknote is an enormously expensive undertaking, costs that ultimately fall on the British taxpayer. So, in a very real sense, Arnaouti's legacy wasn't just the £50 million in fakes that he put into circulation. His legacy was also the cost of fixing the damage he exposed. If you found this story as extraordinary as we did, hit subscribe. We cover true crime, financial crime, and the most audacious criminals in history every single week. Drop a comment below. Let us know. What would you do with a machine that printed perfect £50 notes? Actually, don't answer that. We'll see you in the next one.